Parents of killers? What's your story? My 15-year-old daughter Beth was the kid every parent hopes for. Honor roll every semester, never missed curfew, always had her nose buried in some book. She wanted to be a journalist, said she was going to change the world with her writing. I found notebooks everywhere in her room, filled with stories and random thoughts. I thought it was sweet. It started junior year when this kid Ryan started picking on her. Not just regular teasing either. This boy was cruel. He'd follow her around school calling her weird, knocking books out of her hands, posting mean stuff about her online. The worst part was when he stood up in the cafeteria and announced to everyone that Beth still wore training bras and probably never kissed anyone. Beth came home crying that day, begged me to let her transfer schools, said she couldn't take it anymore. I marched straight to that principal's office the next morning, ready to raise hell, but they basically brushed me off, said kids will be kids, that Ryan was just going through a tough time at home. They promised to talk to him, but nothing changed. For weeks, Beth barely ate. She'd come home and go straight to her room. I could hear her crying through the walls some nights. I tried everything, offered to homeschool her, suggested self-defense classes, even called Ryan's parents myself. Nothing worked. Then suddenly, around November, Beth seemed better. She was eating again, talking more at dinner. I figured maybe the bullying had stopped or she was just learning to ignore it. I was so relieved to see my daughter smiling again. 3 weeks later, they found Ryan's body in the woods behind the school. Police said he'd been beaten with something heavy. No witnesses, no cameras back there. The whole town was shocked. Ryan might have been a bully, but he was still just 16. I remember holding Beth that night while she cried about how horrible it was. She seemed genuinely upset, said she felt bad for his family even after everything he'd done to her. I thought maybe this tragedy would teach other kids to be kinder. 2 months later, police knocked on our door. They had a search warrant. I couldn't understand what they wanted with us, why they were going through Beth's room, taking her notebooks and laptop. Then Detective Morris sat me down at my kitchen table and opened one of Beth's journals, the one I thought was full of creative writing. He started reading entries dated back to September. October 3rd, watched Ryan walk home today. Takes the same route every time. Goes through the woods to avoid the main road. October 15th, found the perfect spot. Nobody goes back there after school. Lots of heavy rocks. October 22nd, did a practice run. Timed everything. Need to make sure he's alone. November 8th, today's the day. Been planning this for weeks. He deserves what's coming. The detective kept reading, but I stopped hearing the words. My daughter, my sweet Beth, who cried over dead birds, had stalked this boy for weeks. She'd written down every detail, every plan, like she was writing a story for English class. But it wasn't fiction. The journal had everything. How she followed him, learned his schedule, waited for the right day when he'd be walking alone. How she hid behind a tree with a rock until he passed by. She even wrote about how satisfied she felt walking home afterward. She didn't try to hide any of it, just wrote it all down like it was homework. When they arrested her, Beth looked at me with those same innocent eyes and asked if I could bring her favorite blanket to jail, like she was going to summer camp. The trial lasted 6 months. Beth's lawyer tried to argue temporary insanity, said the bullying had pushed her over the edge, but those journals showed weeks of planning, clear, calculated thinking. She got 25 years.